All right, this is the Happy House Hunters, and I want to tell you just a little bit about the Happy House Hunters. We started, oh gosh, I'm going to say now, 6 or 7 years ago, and there were 3 couples of us that just simply got together for dinner once a month, and that's how the whole program got started. And so at this point, we have a free meetup on Zoom once a month. We used to meet in person. We had up to 50 folks that were coming out every month for our in-person meetup. But then when the pandemic hit and everything kind of closed down, we switched over to Zoom. And so now, we don't have a big audience that taps in live, but we do have a lot of folks that have registered for the live event because they want to get that replay. And so we're finding when I go to what I call the back of the house after our event is over, and I look to see who has listened to the replays, we're getting a lot of viewership after the fact. And so for those of you that do tap in, we are on Vimeo. We also are on YouTube. And then we also are on a podcast on Audio Boom, which goes out to 8 additional channels like Amazon Music and Spotify and Podcast Addict. Anyway, there's a total of 8. So you can find us in a lot of different places. Now, what we do for the Happy House Hunters is we go through the 6 F's of real estate twice a year. We start in January, and then we start over again in July. And we talk about finding, how to find that deal. And then we talk about funding your deal. And then we talk about fixing the deal. And finally, whether you're going to flip it or whether you're going to fill it. In other words, keep it and hold it as a rental. And then the 6th F is, what is your freedom number? Is how many of those flips or fills do you have to do to make your day job optional? Wouldn't that be wonderful? So that's where we're at. So tonight we're actually talking about flipping. So that's our topic for this month, is flipping. And then next month is filling. And I'm going to be talking next month about filling because we're going to be talking all about the buy and hold and the easy way to manage. And I'm going to give you a bunch of hacks next month, because if you talk to Uncle Joe, he, that had rentals back in the day, you're thinking he was always complaining about those tenants, and I don't want to do that. That's always a headache. But I can give you some insight on how to make that easier. I personally have 24 doors. I had upwards of 30. I'm back to 24. We sold off 3 of our duplexes. We flipped those instead. And I might get 1 or 2 calls a month. So yeah, not a big headache if you have your systems in place. And I know CJ will agree with me that systems is the answer. That's the key to running your real estate business, is having it in systems. I see that Christy has joined us, so I'm going to jump over and bring her up as panelist as well. So Christy, come on over. And welcome Tammy and Joe. I see we have Tammy and Joe in the audience. And chat with us in the chat. Put every question you have or comment, you can just put it there in the chat. Now, again, we meet the first Tuesday of every month on Zoom. This is our monthly meetup. And then we meet the 4th Thursday of every month in person at Gresso's in Columbus. So for those of you that are local to us in the Columbus, Ohio area, you are welcome to come out and join us the 4th Thursday of every month at Gresso's. It's a restaurant bar on South High Street in Columbus, and the food's pretty good there. So come on out, and food and beverages on your own, but come on out and network with us that 4th Thursday. So in addition to that, we have a mastermind group, and our mastermind group is a smaller group that we actually take them by the hand, so to speak, and we actually tour different properties all around the Central Ohio area. And that's where you get to peek in the attic and, in the crawl spaces. And we actually talk about what it would cost to either flip or fill that particular property. And we talk about the whole thing, how you find it, how you fund it, how you fix it, how you flip it, how you fill it, and then how many of those you have to do to make, again, your day job optional. So we have Boots on the Ground, which is our mastermind group this week. So I'm going to turn it over to Kyle. And Kyle, tell us what we're going to be doing this week with Boots on the Ground.
Yeah, so with Boots on the Ground, like Kathy said, it's an opportunity for us all to get out and meet IRL in real life. and actually get to see these properties up close and personal. Put your hands on things, touch things, open doors, bring flashlights and ladders. Because pictures can be very deceiving in both ways, good and bad. I've seen, listings where I saw the pictures and I thought, ooh, I would never live there. And you see it in person, it's like, oh, those are just terrible pictures. And vice versa. I've been misled by some beautiful pictures and I get there and I'm like, wow, what a dump. So actually getting into a place and seeing it in person really can make a big difference. And up until this point, we've actually focused a lot on multifamily units and some single family units because, more doors are better, helps you get to your freedom number faster. But we're going to mix it up a little bit this month, and we're actually going to go and look at a condo. So condos, of course, come with low maintenance. They usually have someone taking care of the roofs and the gutters and the grounds for you, which is great as a rental. And with rising interest rates, everyone's got to start to think out of the box now to make your numbers work. And so we're actually going to be focusing this condo, pitching it as a good midterm rental or Airbnb. And so those numbers will work out a lot better than just your traditional 12-month lease. So we will be taking a look at that tomorrow on campus. So if you're going to join us, please wear your scarlet and gray, and we will see you there, boots on the ground.
Yes, perfect. And you can go to kathybinner.com. I'm going to put that in the chat. And the kathybinner.com actually has my calendar of events. Just scroll down the homepage to the calendar of events and click on whatever event you want to attend, and it has all the information you need right there on the calendar. So Christy, welcome. I see Christy is on. She is my official co-host for this particular meetup. And so Christy, just say hi and tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we're going to turn it over to CJ.
Hi, I'm Christy Hawkins, and I am happily Kathy's co-host of this every month. Been in real estate for about 30 years, taking kind of a little break right now, but it's fine, and we'll probably be back at it someday in the near future.
I get it. I get it. Yes. Yes. I understand completely. That's what we did. We had those duplexes that were a little further out from Central Ohio. And I told Mark, I said, when you're done, traveling 2.5 hours to work on a property, cry uncle. And he did. He said, I need a break. So we flipped those. And so now he's taking a little break, and I've got my team in my back pocket that does my maintenance when I need it. And so he gets to do what he loves, which is airplanes, and I get to do what I love, which is real estate. So anyway, that's a little bit about us. And so Christy is my co-host for this particular event, the first Tuesday of every month. And Kyle is my co-host for all of the mastermind group. Kyle is a licensed realtor, and so he gets us in all of those amazing properties that we want to take a look at. So tonight we have CJ Estel, and he has quite a background and quite a history for us. And our topic again for this month is flipping. And so I'm going to turn it over to CJ. So CJ, tell us a little bit about your background and how in the heck did you get to where you are today? Because for those of you that don't know CJ, he's a lot more aggressive than I am in the real estate world. So, and I love that about CJ. I love talking with him. I can't wait. Every time we have a conversation, I learn something every single time. So get out your notepad, get out your pen. You're going to learn something tonight. I can guarantee it. So CJ, over to you.
All right, well, let me get my presentation pulled up here. Somewhere in here is the spot where I can present. Maybe. Where's the little button for that? Sorry, I don't normally use Google Slides.
Nope, I get it.
Slideshow, here we go. All right, so as Kathy said, my name's CJ Estel. So I wanted to kind of start with a disclaimer of who I am and who I am not. So I am a real estate investor. I enjoy growing my network, sharing information with like-minded individuals. And as Kathy said, I've grown pretty aggressively. I've met some people that are more aggressive than me. So that's always a good thing too. But Some of the stuff that I've done in my own journey is probably past the risk tolerance of a lot of people. So whatever I tell you guys, I'm not an attorney, a CPA, a financial advisor. I am not a real estate agent or a broker. I am just sharing the various things that I have learned and my interpretation of what some of those things may mean. I'm also not an English major, so please, take it easy on me if you see any grammar issues or anything like that. I also really love some internet memes, so I'm going to share some of the better real estate ones that I found throughout this presentation as well. So I guess what qualifies me to give this presentation? I've only been at this for about 4.5 years. I had a pretty cushy IT job, making great money. I was one of the top database administrators in the nation. I've talked at international conferences about databases, technology, automations, systems that you might have in some of the IT world to try and help things flow smoothly. Basically, I got into the IT world. I'd started my own business years and years ago, and I didn't know much about what it actually took to run a business. It was an IT-based business. I did a lot of consulting for mom and pop shops. The 2008 crash actually caused a lot of my clients to go under, and in turn I ended up holding on to employees for way too long. I started to actually study business at that point in time in my life and realized that what I had set up wasn't really a business in the sense of something that it in itself would have its own value. I had bought myself a job. All I was doing, if I stopped working, there was nothing there. It was a lifestyle business. So as I started to kind of learn more about what it takes to run a business, some of the stuff that really jumped out at me was, recurring revenue and, building things so that when you stop working, the money still keeps coming in. So I was in a pretty bad spot financially. I tried to go to banks, tried to get money, and turns out banks only like to give money to you when you don't need it. That was something I learned kind of pretty early in my career, well before I got into real estate.
Isn't that the truth, CJ?
It really is. So the more that you can learn about lending and what lenders want to see, that's going to have a direct benefit in your business. I've actually, as we kind of go through some of these other things here, I've literally used 0% checks off of credit cards to purchase houses. I've used 24 months same as cash on a Home Depot or a Lowe's card to fix it, and then refinance that money back out or sell it, or because I don't recommend those things for people who aren't constantly looking at their numbers and knowing, hey, this is going to go to 24% interest if I don't pay it off by this date. You've got to put systems in place to not only help run your business, but especially to keep track of things like when do I have money due to private lenders, or when does this interest rate change? And there's a lot of cool things that you can get into. But some of the aggressiveness that I've had in that 4.5 years time, I've bought well over $5 million worth of real estate. I've bought that across 26 properties. I've got some commercial office space. Some people will tell you, hey, pick one thing and go after it. That's not really what I did. I kind of diversified within the real estate spectrum. So I've got self-storage, I've got single family, small multifamily, small apartment buildings, commercial office space. Basically, I just threw whatever at the wall. If the numbers worked and it was a good deal, I went ahead and picked it up. And now I'm at a point where I'm starting to kind of refine things. And some of these are maybe longer term flips, or some of them, we'll talk a little bit about exit strategies. But some of those are longer term flips. Some of them are ultimately, flip to a buy and hold type of loan. And then some of these are, stuff that we're just going to get rid of and, shorter flips. So you really got to figure out what you want to do with it. But, where I'm at today, I've basically been able to learn how to utilize other people's money. We're going to talk a little bit about that. I know this is the flipping presentation, not the funding, but you can really put your pedal to the metal when you start to build those connections and use other people's money. That $5 million in real estate, I've got about $50,000 out of pocket in all of those acquisitions total. So other people's money is a really powerful thing, and it comes into play in flipping just as much as it does in many other areas of real estate. So I have exited on those 26 properties that I've currently got. I've exited to a longer term strategy on the vast majority of those. And then I've got some of those that are a little bit more directly towards flips or still under construction, or we're at that final stage where we're flipping it over to a different type of financing. So from the time I bought my first rental until where I'm at today, my business had really struggled. I was on the verge of bankruptcy back in 2010. I joined the corporate world, and the information I had, the ability to do what I do. I excelled pretty well in the corporate world. Was very fortunate to be able to work for and with 3 different startup companies that all had a pretty profitable exit. My most recent one was with Cover My Meds, which, if you're familiar with that, they sold for 1.4 billion a few years ago. So it was really neat to be able to meet some of the founders of that company, have conversations with them, see how they evaluate risks and plan out growth. But I started looking at when I would be able to retire if I stayed at this job. It was a great IT job. And I was on track to retire at 65 after kind of my late start and being almost bankrupt, a handful of years earlier. So I talked with my wife and I said, look, we're on track. We've got some money sitting in, an IRA. We've got some money sitting over, in our equity in our primary home. I don't want to retire at 65. So let's talk through what we need to do to go forward. So ultimately I started by, buying a property. I had no idea what I was doing. Bought a property that ultimately was a pretty bad buy. I just didn't know it. I didn't know how to crunch the numbers on things. And before I'd even closed on it, I identified another property that I wanted to buy. I talked to the lender. He's like, yeah, you're good to go. So I closed on my first property April 1st in 2018. May 1st, I closed on a duplex. And then mid-June, I closed on another single family. So I just kind of rolled into it pretty hardcore. And around that third property is where I met my own mentor. He kind of took me under his wing, taught me how to crunch numbers, taught me what I was doing right and what I was doing wrong. To this day, we actually have a weekly meeting. I've learned a lot about business. He's got a lot of stuff with real estate, and we hold an accountability meeting with each other weekly to kind of set our goals, try and make sure that we're moving towards those goals. But as I was getting started, the biggest thing that I had heard is it's really hard to find good contractors to do stuff. And here I am. I've got a full-time day job. Everything we're doing in the real estate is just, play money, if you will. If something were to go wrong, I still could pay all of our bills with our income. So I really had pretty low risk at that time. I built my credit up. I had really high limits on a lot of my cards because I learned, hey, they only give you money when you don't need it. So when I got, on top of everything, I called every one of those banks, said, hey, I'm getting ready to put a deck on the back of my house. I'd love to put it onto your credit card, but I really don't want to go over 50% on this. And that, $5,000 limit went to 10,000, that $15,000 limit to 30. And I literally played that game for years before I even bought my first investment property. So
CJ, I did the same thing. I get it. I did the exact same thing.
Yeah, it's so powerful. I mean, I've got over $50,000 available on multiple credit cards. And, that's really powerful when they're sending you these 0% interest checks, that's good for 18 months. That's well long enough to buy something and rehab it and get your money out. So it's a really aggressive strategy. I don't necessarily recommend folks do that unless, they're really cognizant about their numbers. But that's how I got started. I kind of looked at the fact that contractors are hard to find. And I said, well, if I were to just from day one say I want to hire 2 contractors, if I can continue to buy enough real estate to keep them busy, if I can use the BRRRR methodology, which I'd imagine most people that are going to be in this group are familiar with, but that's where you buy a property at a discount because it's distressed, you rehab it, you rent it out, you refinance to get your money, and you go into that next property. If I can always have that next property ready, whether it's a flip for quicker cash flow, or if I'm flipping it into a long-term buy, I should be able to keep these contractors busy. And anything they can't do, if there's a HVAC specialist or whatnot, we'll branch out to there. But from the very beginning, I hired full-time people to run my own construction company. And when we got up to the higher number of units, those 26 properties ultimately is over 150 units at this point. As we continued to grow, I said, we've got office staff that's running most of the day-to-day. We've got construction companies that are our employees that are keeping everything busy, fixing up and building our inventory count of units and rentals. So what would it take to roll these things out to be able to manage for other people? So to date, we've now got 3 crews that work on our rehabs and some of our clients' rehabs. And then I actually partnered with a real estate broker, which is what is necessary to have to be able to manage for other people. So Focus Realty and Management is our brokerage, and then we've got You Pick to Rent as my construction company. So that's kind of how I got to where I'm at overall. And I'm happy to answer any questions too as we go through this from anybody too. But that's kind of what I've done that got me in front of Kathy and had her ask me, hey, can you chat with some folks about this and what you're doing? So meme number 1 here. We've seen a lot of crazy things. I don't at all pretend to be some real estate master or anything else. I started investing 4.5 years ago. I couldn't have picked a better time to start investing in real estate. We've seen a lot of appreciation. We've seen rents go up. So there's definitely an element of luck. I think over the next few years, we're going to start to really see what people are made of when it comes to real estate. Some of the deals have been harder to find. Things are changing. People are tighter on money. Just a lot of craziness that's going on. So I was pretty lucky, and I don't want to discount the luck that I experienced throughout my own growth. So an agenda as far as what we're going to go over, first, why do we invest in real estate? I'm going to go over some common real estate strategies. When people talk about flips, typically they're just thinking about a home. So I want to kind of redefine that a little bit so that you're open to what you can actually do when it comes to flipping. And then go over some of the risks that are out there that you might want to be aware of, how you reduce that risk. Some of the common mistakes that a lot of home flippers in particular make. And then I think what's really going to hit home for a lot of people, I'm going to go over some of the formulas that I use when I evaluate, hey, is this something that I should, flip for the quick cash, or is it something that I should hold on to? So my own decision-making tree and, some thoughts on what you might want to have in yours. And then again, this isn't about funding, but there's some funding sources that people may not even be aware of. So I want to make sure to kind of go over, hey, from a flipping perspective, you may consider these options to hold on to some more of your own cash. And then lastly, when you get into flipping, frankly, you get into it when you hold as well, but there's tax implications to what goes on there. So I want to make sure that folks, don't walk away thinking they made a ton and then Uncle Sam comes and whips you upside the head. So sound good for an agenda from everyone?
Yes, that sounds wonderful. Yes, I've already got my questions picked out.
So know your why. I threw a few things on here that matter to me. Ultimately, you want to figure out what the biggest things are that you're working towards. Why are you getting into real estate? Why are you building this? Are you working more now? Frankly, I could get rid of all the real estate, go back to a comfy IT job and never worry. I'm in many instances working more now than I was when I was in IT. Some of that is because of the decisions I have I want to create generational wealth. I want to be able to give to area nonprofits. I'd love to be, when somebody says my name, gosh, he's one of the best employers in the state or in the county or the city, so, know your why. It's been great to be able to have my kids in the office, every day with me. Know what you're working towards, and then ask yourself, what am I doing, and is it going to help me get to my goals? If you need to go out and find these, if you need to work with more wholesalers, if you need to, there's a saying, it's not about how much you make, it's about how much you keep. So when you look at, hey, if I flip this, or if I wholesale this, or whatever I do, at the end of the day, is that quick hit of cash worth more than the longevity of holding that asset, and which direction is going to help you achieve your why? So some common real estate strategies, whenever you go to get something into contract, there's a lot of things you can do with that. You can wholesale it. You can wholetail it, which is basically just doing a few minor fixes. You're probably going to close that and then resell it with pretty minimal stuff. Maybe it's a hoarder and you clean out the house and then list it for twice what you had in it, or something like that. Fix and flip, great for a good shot of cash in the arm. Fix and hold, the BRRRR strategy, is largely what my exit strategy ends up being on most of my stuff. But again, there's definitely times for fixes and flips. I'll go over some of the deals that I think are going to be pretty lucrative for us right now that are in that category. There's development that you can do. You can pick up something and repurpose it, build it out, get an old factory. There's strategies of, I just buy turnkey stuff. I don't want to deal with the BRRRR, and I'm fine with maybe lower returns than some of that higher risk stuff that you get into. Some people will intentionally sell on terms. They're going to land contract it out, or lease option it, or things of that nature. And that was their whole goal when they bought it in the first place. I actually had a house that I picked up for, I can't remember, 32,000, 36,000, something like that. And before I bought it, I'd had somebody reach out to me that they were interested in possibly buying a trailer, didn't have much money. And wanted to be able to buy something on terms. And I came across this house and said, hey, with the proper deposit and everything else, we can go ahead and get this. So I bought this house on terms, and before I bought the house and then immediately sold it on terms. Like I'd worked it out that I could let him move in before I'd even closed on it to get everything to happen correctly. And ultimately he ended up not executing. So got some money out of that, and had it rented for a while. So selling on terms is another great way to kind of exit a property. And you can actually exit it sometimes multiple times if people don't close on it, and get some good shots in the arm that way too. Sometimes you might buy something with the explicit intent to, hey, I want to be out of this in the next 3 years or 5 years or 7 years. And up front, hey, I'm going to 1031 exchange this to avoid some of the taxes and push those funds into a REIT, or maybe I want to do an opportunity zone. We can talk about some of those things in detail, kind of with a Q&A at the end. Those may be foreign concepts to some folks, but really cool strategies. Other strategies, you might buy that and fix it up, or maybe it's that turnkey. Ultimately, if you let your tenant pay it off, and another 10, 15, 20 years, as you get appreciation and you get principal pay down, you can pull that back as a loan. And you've got a nice shot in the arm of money that you don't have to pay any taxes on it because it's a loan. There's estate planning that you can work through, as you buy assets and look to protect them. And then another really popular one, and you're seeing this, I think, with a lot of some of the Airbnbs, this might be a great way to get great cash flow, buy that dream home that you want, let your tenants pay it off, and then you move into it when you retire. So there's a lot of different strategies and kind of exits that you might have from the various strategies as we go through those. Any questions about any of these?
I have a question about, is it a good idea? And I know, again, you're not an attorney or, a financial planner per se, But is it a good idea to put your properties into an LLC or a trust, or are you going to get into that in somewhere in your presentation?
We can talk about that a little bit more now. So I personally have most of my stuff held directly into an LLC holding company.
Okay.
There's a lot of strategies that you'll definitely want to figure out what's right for you. But for me personally, sometimes you can get better discounts if a single entity owns things. Some insurance providers might say, well, yeah, you've got 20 properties, but they're in 20 different LLCs. One, you're going to have a lot of bookkeeping expense to keep everything separately. Odds are you're going to end up piercing the corporate veil, which means you're going to commingle funds in one way, shape, or form, and you don't get the LLC protections that you think you would. So for me personally, I kind of say, take things based on the amount of risk you have and maybe pick a dollar amount and then start as many LLCs as you have. And you can actually kind of nest the LLCs. So one LLC, you could have a holdings company, and that holdings company owns the interest in the other LLCs, whether it's 100% or if you have partners. And then what that allows you to do is you can kind of roll all of that up into a single entity. I'm going to have a lot of disregarded entities below that still offer you those protections. You can take it a step further. You'd mentioned a trust. There's actually 3 main different types of trusts that you're going to find in real estate. One is a land trust, and that is explicitly there for the purposes of holding land. It actually goes back to the days of, if when you're on horseback and whatnot, and you have to go out to war, and you're leaving your family there. At that point in time, women didn't have the ability to do much. They didn't have the social constructs that they do today. So you would actually create a land trust and let somebody else manage your property for you, or kind of take care of the decisions that you have. And then your family who was staying there was the beneficiary of those decisions of that land trust. And that's still kind of the way that it's structured today. There are some cool things that you can do with land trusts where you say, hey, I'm going to make my LLC the beneficiary of the land trust. And that can actually give you protections potentially against lawsuits, against, there's also a saying that says, own nothing, control everything. And that's kind of what the land trust starts to push you towards, is you don't actually own it. The land trust owns it, but you get all of the benefits from it. And there's ways to preserve all the decision-making power from it. So if somebody ever slips and falls or whatever, and that trust is there, even though your beneficiary is the LLC, they can only go after that trust, and that trust doesn't own anything. So
Interesting.
So there's a lot of really good strategies on that. Vina and Bill, talk a lot about. What's his name? Well, anyway, I have not gotten into that yet. I have been researching that as something I may want to do. But I haven't done that personally yet. The other 2 types of trust that you're going to see is a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust. The revocable trust is something that you can revoke it. Basically, it's funded on your death. You get the full ability to say, hey, I want to put stuff into this. And maybe if you've got a spouse that's not great with money, or you want to make sure that your kids can't blow everything before they're 25, and you want to give it to them over time, or whatever you want to do, you want to have control over that after your death. That's a great instance where you might want to set up a revocable trust. You can still manage everything, do everything. When you pass away, all of those things are left into the trust. You can have what's called a pour over will. If there's anything that you missed, it all goes to the trust, and then you've got trustees assigned that fulfill your wishes with those funds. So that gives you kind of some of that control into the afterlife. Where it doesn't really help you is, since it gets funded when you die, that means your assets are all there while you're still alive. If you end up having to go into a nursing home or get onto Medicaid, or have a serious personal issue, anything that you have or that you own comes into play, and they can force you to sell those things. So a lot of times, from the protection side of things there, you may actually want to have a revocable trust that you say, okay, cool, I want to fill this bucket until I'm comfortable and I know everything's good. But that from a generational wealth perspective, you might say, here's the stuff that I want to protect from us too. So that nobody can come after what you have or you and your spouse have together, is kind of where the other type of trust really comes into play. So again, talk with an accountant or an attorney that specializes in trusts. Talk to a real estate specific attorney. Many attorneys are not as familiar with land trusts. So you do not want to just take one of the other two trusts and change the terminology throughout it. It is a completely different thing as you go through those. Yeah, those are the three main trust side of things. And holding in an LLC, make sure if you do choose to go the route that I go, which is kind of having fewer companies and they hold a little bit more, make sure that you get that umbrella policy for your insurance. That's going to kind of help cover you if anything exceeds the limits you have on your insurance on a single property.
And the umbrella policy is very inexpensive in the scheme of things.
Yep. Yeah. I think we have a $10 million policy and it's less than a couple grand a year. I mean, it's not bad.
Oh, wow.
So, protect yourself, whether it's through individual companies or through a single company in insurance. Figure out what the best solution is for you. Some of that may come into what the long-term strategy is if you want to split things up down the road to a revocable trust, things of that nature. Those are the types of things you want to think about as you go through those from the estate planning side of things.
Okay, you see why I tell everybody, get out your paper and pen. You're going to learn something. Every time I talk to CJ, I just learn so much.
Yep, and keep the questions coming. I've got a decent slide deck here, but it's a smaller group, so we should be able to answer things as we go through and go from there. So when you talk about flipping, the first thing that comes to mind is houses, but it's not the only thing that you can flip. There are plenty of people out there that'll buy land from a farmer and then they're going to flip it to the developer that actually wants to build things. So they're building relationships with developers and figuring out what they want, and then they're the bird dog that's going and finding the land to be able to help build out those subdivisions, and they really don't have that much risk in it. Especially if you've already got an end buyer lined up when you're hunting for what that end buyer wants. So some really cool stuff you can do just flipping land. You can flip purchase contracts. That's basically the whole concept behind wholesaling, right? You get it under contract, and then you're going to sell that contract for more than what the price is, and you get that as an assignment fee. As you get into wholesaling, if that is something that you do, make sure that you find a mentor and somebody well versed on that. There are a lot of got yous. In Ohio in particular, they're starting to crack down on some of the things that are there. If you're wholesaling and you're throwing the full address out on the thing, you're listing a house. So it's very explicit when you see something come from a wholesaler, like, why'd they black out all of the numbers and just give me the road? Like, because they're doing it right. So you want to make sure, if you do end up getting into things, you don't know what you don't know. So find somebody to help coach you that's doing it and that's reputable. In the state of Ohio, they're starting to push a lot more towards, which personally, I think this is a complete conflict of interest anyway, but they're starting to push a lot of the wholesalers out and making it so you have to be a licensed realtor to do a lot of the various things. And to me, if you're, a realtor who's doing wholesaling, I know a lot of brokerages do it. A lot of people do it. To me, it just, seems like it's maybe violating some of that fiduciary duty. I know you're giving them disclosures and whatnot, but you're supposed to have their best interest in mind. And that's part of why I never got my real estate license, is I didn't want to be talking to somebody, get something under contract, knowing that I could sell it for more. I don't have their best interest in mind. I have mine in mind in most cases when you do that. So that's part of why I decided to not actually get my license. But again, you want to find a mentor who's doing it. Make sure you know what the gotchas are. Make sure you're not going to do something that's going to get yourself into trouble. and kind of go from there. Promissory notes, note flipping is definitely a thing. You can buy a note at a discounted rate and then sell it back to somebody else, for it. Another thing, this one, if you guys know Bill Cook from the local RIA in Columbus, he's a really creative guy, and he'll actually flip terms. He had somebody come to him and say, hey, I've got this building under contract. The appraisal came back at, $400,000. I've got half of it, but I need the other $200,000, and I need to close this week. And it's not going to go through the bank. And Bill, in the presentation, I was listening to Bill, and I'm sure I get some of these numbers a little wrong. They said, well, what are you thinking as far as terms? And he said, I could do 10%, and I'm happy to do 2 points if we can get this done. So Bill talks about it. He was actually using his IRA, self-directed IRA. And he's like, so I looked at my IRA and I just loaned everything out. I had about $500 in there. So clearly I can't really do much, at least not too much. But what I can do is I can connect with other people I know that are willing to lend. So, this guy's going to have 50% down on this property. He just needs to close quick. He's talking a 5-year balloon, 2 points, 10%. So I called up my one buddy that does private lending. I said, hey, I've got a guy that's in a pickle. I'm happy to vouch for him. Everything's, good as far as the numbers go. What would you be willing to lend? Can you do a couple $100,000? He said, well, I can only do 170,000. That's all I've got right now. But if you're saying he's good, Bill, I could do it for 8%. So he calls another guy and says, hey, would you be able to do $30,000 on a second position loan? There's plenty of equity on there. The guy says, yeah. He said, well, what would you do as far as terms go? Well, I'd be willing to do it for 9%. So Bill says, all right, here's what I'm going to do. He ended up having a first position mortgage with the first guy for the 170, a second position for the second guy for $29,900. And he said, I had a third position mortgage that my IRA put up that wrapped both of the other mortgage. Think of a wrap as a sublease, right? So
Okay.
the existing terms have to kind of line up. So his wrap was responsible for paying the first and second mortgage. So the guy signed 3 mortgages that day, pays one to Bill's IRA, and Bill's IRA pays the other 2 at 8% and 9%. And Bill's IRA got 2 points at closing for that. So he's making the spread $100 in his IRA, and he made 2 points on a $200,000 loan and is getting the spread between the 8% and the 9% to the 10% he's charging in that third position. So, when you say, gosh, I don't have much money, or how do people get money into their, Roth IRAs or things like that, that $100 investment was seeing a few 1,000% instant growth, and then a spread of a couple $100 a month coming into it. So that's a way to flip terms that story he told is always kind of stuck with me, and just thought it was really creative. So some of the other things, people need all kinds of stuff: boats, cars, trailers, campers, horses.
You're missing one. You're missing one, CJ.
What's that?
Airplanes.
Yeah.
Mark flips airplanes, and I don't mean literally flips them. I mean, he buys them, fixes them up, and resells them.
Yeah. And, it might be something that you go to buy a house and there's an airplane sitting there, and you make that as part of the deal, like there are all kinds of stuff. If you guys had a duplex that you were selling and somebody came to you and said, hey, I've got this airplane over here, Mark would have taken that on trade for one of those.
Absolutely.
Discounted it. So
absolutely.
So it's really important to talk to people, ask them what they need. And even if you're not flipping something, directly with the same person, you can flip things between multiple parties. So kind of keep that in mind. And then options are another really, really cool thing. Think about it. If you've got a tenant that you gave a lease option to, and they're coming up to the end of that, and they never repaired their credit, they're not able to go out and buy this. A lot of them don't realize that they could sell that option to somebody else, and you'd have to honor it unless your option prohibits the sale to somebody else. So there's plenty of times where it might make sense to just get an option to buy a property. And then if it doesn't work for you, you can sell the option to somebody who it does work for. And typically you can get options pretty affordably. There's somebody who has a really cool historical house here in Lancaster. The paint's falling off. They're in their 90s. One of my investors is, always wanted to pick it up, and she wants just way too much money for it. It's not worth it in the condition that it's in. But the city's getting onto her about all this paint and stuff, chipping off and whatnot. So I told this investor, I said, why don't you see if she'd be interested in giving you an option to buy the house at the price that she wants in exchange for you paying to have somebody take care of the paint issue on the outside of the home. It'll cost you about $5,000. You've got an option in place. If she lives for a few more years, that option can extend, past her death. If her daughter ends up getting stepped up basis, maybe you even put something into the option that if she's passed, you can buy the house at a lower rate. Options can give you whatever type of thing you want, as long as both parties agree to it. It's great. So, ultimately he ended up not doing that. He's going to have a few different things go on, but had he gotten that option, you wait it out, and it could be something that he threw $5,000 away and he never executes that option. Or it could be something where, if the option gives the ability to buy it at a reduced rate, keep in mind that daughter's going to receive stepped up basis in the property and not pay any taxes. So, there's a lot of really cool things. Or, with inheritance, if you talk to that seller, she's in her 90s, what does your daughter want this house? How cool would it be if your daughter could have, a paycheck for the next 30 years of her life, or next 15 years, or whatever? You can actually build in sale clauses of things. That's kind of what the option's giving you. And with that stepped up basis, there's no taxes to pay. So, you can delay a sale with the option until stepped up basis occurs, and then go ahead and close on that, and everybody ends up saving money. So just something you can consider. And then you can flip businesses too. As you study business, what I've found is most unsuccessful businesses aren't unsuccessful solely because of the idea, but it's because of the lack of processes. The owner gets burnt out because they're doing too many things, or they can't get around to the billing and do all of the work, so the billing just doesn't get done, or whatever it is. As you have a business that's struggling, a lot of times, if you're implementing the right things, you can turn around businesses, or maybe you can acquire the business and the assets are worth more than the business, and you can dispo the assets. There's a lot of cool things that you can do within businesses in a variety of ways too. So most people, like I said, think of houses when they're flipping, but don't always look at the now. Sometimes, as investors, what I view my job as an investor when I talk real estate is to find out what problems the person I'm talking to has and what ways I can solve that problem for them. And ideally, that's going to be a win-win. So that's not always, hey, let me buy this house for the cheapest thing that I can buy it for. Maybe that's partnering with the seller and flipping it with them. I don't have to have any holding costs if I partner with somebody who owns something potentially, or whatever. There's all kinds of stuff that you can do, but hear their problem and then have the different tools in your toolkit to know how to solve that problem. And that could be flipping, partnering, could be wholesaling to your network of people, whatever it is. Focus on their problems, listen to their problems. And I think you're going to do really well if you can do that. Some of the risks that you're going to come across, the third house that I ever bought, I thought that I was done investing with that. I thought I was just going to have to wait until I had more money to do stuff. It had foundation issues that, we even had a property inspection on that one. And it was just in an area that, we knew there was water damage in the bathroom, but the crawl space was sealed off. You couldn't get back underneath that area, and the entire interior foundation wall was crumbling. I had to jack the back half of the house up, redo the foundation. Basically went $20-some thousand over budget on that, which was all of my margin. people hire unreliable contractors. The guy on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace for $15 an hour, you know, probably not going to be as reliable as a company that has, you know, multiple people. If somebody's sick or whatever, you know, they're there, they're giving, you know, different quotes, bids, you know, whatever the case may be. The cheapest contractor is not always going to be the best. You might have unreliable funding. Maybe you bought this house with your HELOC, or you bought it with, you know, whatever, and you're using your HELOC to fix it up, and all of a sudden the banks say, hey, you know, rates are going up, we don't like what's going on, we're going to just change your limit, and you know, you no longer have the funds to do it. Or if you're rehabbing with a credit card, maybe you don't get a 0% check, or, you know, whatever the case may be. So, you know, funding changes, you know, inaccurate ARV numbers is probably one of the biggest risks. You know, in some instances, it's fine to say, hey, I'm going to shoot for the stars on this, but you really need to have something to justify what you're shooting for. That hasn't been as big of a problem in most of 2021 and early 2022. But we're starting to see, you know, falling sales prices right now, right? So, you know, as interest rates have gone up, you know, if that same amount of money of buying power a person had before is now down. So, yeah, we haven't seen sales prices fall too much in our particular region yet, but they are falling in other areas. And, you know, those increased interest rates are definitely part of it, both on the buying and selling side. You might have a variable interest on the rehab that you're doing, or, you know, on the buying side, if they've got that there too, again, that goes towards your purchasing power. We've got all kinds of supply chain issues that have happened throughout COVID and whatnot. If you can't get the supplies that you need to finish a job, then you're probably going to run out of time on that job, and you may have additional points for another 6-month extension or whatever, depending on the type of lender that you used. So, you know, being able to recognize those as things, you know, it's going to contribute to your holding costs. You know, you could have zoning issues. You know, gosh, I want to, you know, we've got a industrial warehouse that we bought that zoned as a small multifamily property. It's literally a warehouse, never been used for anything other than that. They rezoned the area, and the warehouse had been empty, so there's no one there to say, hey, this is a dumb idea, and now it's zoned for something it won't ever be. So, you know, can the thing that you're trying to flip or do be the thing that you want it to be? And what does that look like? You know, in our case, you know, I talked to the city, yeah, fill out this, you know, zoning form, you know, you're gonna have to use the long form, you know, what's it look like? It's highly unlikely anybody's going to challenge that from a zoning perspective. You know, what does that process look like if you do end up needing to change things? And then unexpectedly low appraisals. This definitely hits with the Burr methodology, but it can hit with a sell too. You know, sometimes the appraisers just come in and they really screw up a deal. So this is probably one of my favorite real estate memes. This is another meme that I like. So, you know, we've talked a little bit about what the risks are. So, you know, let's get started. You know, and in this one, you know, Dad, can I use your tools? And, you know, the mom says, you know, that's going to end poorly. And the dad says, I disagree. I think it's going to start poorly. You know, kid bangs up some stuff, breaks some stuff, but you know what? That kid's learning different skills. And ultimately down the road, those skills are going to help that kid as they grow up be able to accomplish some really cool things. So, you know, be that kid, be the one that's willing to pick up the tools, willing to learn. And they don't have to be physical tools. They can be, you know, business coaching. They can be, you know, sitting down at the computer going through, they can be driving for dollars. You know, there are tons of different metaphorical tools, right? So don't be afraid to get started. So the biggest thing on reducing risks, know your market. You know, what is that after repair value going to come in at? And a lot of times that's going to be based on finishes. Are we finishing this for, you know, a rental? Are we finishing this for a lower end neighborhood? Are we finishing for higher end neighborhood? What are the school districts? If I've got a 4-bedroom house, in a good district versus a bad district, is that going to impact how I rehab this and what I want to do? What kind of crime is in the area? Am I going to have to think of things like, hey, let's throw some bars on the doors and make sure we've got that steel cage around the AC? So know the market, know the area. The number one thing that you want to do in reducing risks is make sure that there's enough meat on the bone. There's a saying, you make money when you buy real estate, not when you sell it. And that really holds true. There are many times where when you buy that real estate, if there's enough margins and something comes up, I don't want to say that you don't care. You always care. You always want to keep a good inventory on what's going on. But if the project is still there to absorb it, that you're not coming out of your pocket. So, making sure that deal is actually a deal. And if you truly have a deal, that's also going to help you when you go to fundraise for it, and ask for money. If you're coming in and you're at 80% of what the ARV is when you're all said and done, yeah, that might put $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 into your pocket. But if you were at 50%, gosh, anybody in the world will lend on that, right? So, what do those margins look like as you go through? I've gotten to the point where there are times where I will forego the inspections. I'll walk it with my own staff. We've bought and sold enough stuff. If I'm planning to do a complete rehab, I don't necessarily care about as many things because I already know I'm going to gut it. But depending on what your comfort level is, make sure to bring somebody or get it inspected, so that you know what you're getting into. We bought a house and, I got a great deal on it. It was a $152,000 house. It had been used as a business. We replaced we didn't know everything that was wrong with it, but we ended up replacing the main sewer line was collapsed. The gas line didn't pass a pressure test inside or exteriorly, so we had to replace all gas lines. We got rid of all the knob and tube. We had to get rid of all the galvanized water pipes inside. We had to completely build a kitchen that didn't exist. But ultimately, we had $140,000 in equity on that house after everything was said and done, because we bought it right, and the ARV in that area was pushing 400. So some cool things you can do if you've got the right margins. And if you are going to forego the inspections, at least have an idea of worst case, this is what those things may run, and know that you don't care about it because it's a good enough deal that you want to move on it and you're not going to have issues. Once again, the cheapest contractors aren't always the best. I hear people talk all the time. They were great for 4 days, and then they wanted me to start paying them daily, and then they missed, or can I get next week's advance or whatever. Typically good contractors are going to be able to do a significant portion, if not all of the work on smaller jobs, especially, and float that within their own stuff. When I call a reputable plumbing company, they're going to do the work, and I'm going to write them a check when it's said and done. I don't give them 30% ahead, of time. There are some contractors I've developed a relationship with over time, that maybe we do get into more of that, but that's something to always kind of keep in mind, and don't go for the cheapest guy out there. You're going to have to make choices and pivot in different times. So know what you aren't willing to change on. And keep in mind, this is not your house. You need to finish it for your audience, not for you. So many people, go in and they're like, oh, well, this is how I would want it. I don't care what you would want. What does this neighborhood want? And that's really what you want to go towards with things. Maybe, especially with supply chain issues, maybe you wanted to use a particular type of cabinet style, and we had 20 apartments we were working on. We'd had everything set, and they didn't have 15-inch bridge cabinets, and it was back ordered for 8 months. What do we do there? Do we go with a completely different cabinet style? Do we, what does this look like, right? So figure that out, and know, well, gosh, this is the thing that makes this rental what it is. We can't go in any different direction, or we can. We talked a little bit about, can you do what you want with this property? There's a lot of places where you just straight up cannot run a short-term rental. If you're buying something to try and run a short-term rental and the zoning doesn't allow it, you're going to be really disappointed. Maybe it's not even allowed to be a regular rental. Maybe it's an HOA that prohibits it, or a condo association that prohibits it. Is it going to be an investment property, a primary home? Is it for business? Just make sure you can do what you do. Check zoning, check any administrative codes that may exist in the area, especially if you're not familiar with it. Call the chamber, call the building department, call the various places, and try to do as much due diligence as you can pre-purchase. And then you want to pick the right type of funding. And, when you're using other people's money, what makes that really great is it allows you to use your cash as reserves, so that if there's not enough meat on the bone, whatever happens, you can still pull this job across the finish line. It's not uncommon to have a lot of funds tied up in flips or in burrs. So having those cash reserves and knowing that you can get it across the finish line is really important. And then know your exit strategy up front and have a backup exit strategy. Maybe you really want to flip this, but if not, does it cash flow as a regular rental? Or maybe you want to partner on it or wholesale it or whatever. Figure out what you want to do to get rid of it. And then is there a backup that you could have? I can't stand wholesalers who tie up a property and then don't close it. We've got, I know Josh Hiley's really involved in this group too. Mad respect for Josh. If he gets something under contract, he's going to close it. So, great wholesaler, and he has to have that backup strategy, right? His first thing is, hey, I want to make an assignment fee on this, but if I don't, I can still take it down, and then I can flip it, or I can wholesale it, or I can burr it, whatever that means, as you look at those strategies. Any other questions on reducing risks?
Well, I think I want to talk a little bit more about the backup strategies. Give us a couple of examples of what you use for backup strategies, or maybe a real life example of where you've had to fall back on one of your backups.
Yeah, so I purchased self-storage, 2 different facilities, and I was sold on these things are like super low maintenance and they're awesome. You should get as many self-storage units as you can. The industry's growing at 400% year over year annually since the 70s, and there's no slowdown in sight. So I came across some really good deals on 2 different facilities. I ended up getting an assumption of an existing land contract 17 years into a 30-year note with no money out of pocket. So it needed a lot of work. We put a decent amount of work into it. Ultimately, I had huge budget overruns. Apparently, the gate systems and stuff are way more expensive than anyone would think if they didn't know that. Or I wasn't able to find the right contractors, one of the two. But I basically went way over budget. So I said, I don't have the funds to finish this anymore. So I brought on a partner and sold part of the equity in that to bring on a partner to be able to get the cash, to be able to get it a little bit further along and get it to where it needed to go. Ultimately, that partner and I decided to do something different outside of that, and we still don't have everything fully built up or set out. But we're starting to look at one of the things we're going to be talking about a little bit later, which is our return on equity. And basically, I think that there's enough, we bought them right, and there's enough value there that we're probably just going to sell them. I'm probably going to do a few more things to fix it up, take care of the biggest black eyes on the properties, and just let them go. And ultimately, partner I brought on will get all his money back and then some. I had nothing in the deal. I guess I did have a little bit of CapEx in early on. So, I'll get all my CapEx back and then some. And I'll do really well on that facility. The other facility we picked up for $90,000. You know, we could have sold it that same day for 150. So you know, plenty of room to move. You know, both of them are pretty close to a break even as they currently sit, and huge upsides if you want to put the effort into it. I will tell you know, why I don't like self-storage after dealing with it. For it, just, you know, full disclosure to folks, you know, when you end up at the beginning of the month and you have people that don't pay, you end up going out to overlock those units so that they can't get to their stuff, and that forces them to pay sometimes. So ultimately, you're going to go out at the beginning of the month, and let's say you've got 2 facilities, you might overlock 2, 3, 4 units each month. When they pay, they don't all pay at that same time. So now I've got to go on overlock 2, 3, or 4 units. And that's provided, you know, a lot of times with self-storage, people are transient. They're in the middle of moving or whatever. And you've got to go through a lien process and an auction, and it takes a while to get that unit back if they don't pay. So, you know, you can still try and recoup money, but you're going to be getting pennies on the dollar, and you've got 2 to 5 trips out each month to deal with the property, which for me, and this is, you know, the 2 problems I'm aware of in this particular instance are, one, it's not a manned facility. Both of these are smaller facilities that it just wouldn't make sense to have somebody on site for. So if, you know, you're buying self-storage in a larger capacity, you're really buying a business with systems and processes in place to take care of all these things. I don't have those systems or processes, and I don't have people on site. The other way that you can tackle it is if you wanted to put enough capital expenditures in to replace all of the doors with roll-up doors and put electronic braking systems in and stuff, you can 100% automate all of these things. But in these particular markets, those capital expenditures would end up pushing the price higher than what makes sense for these markets.
That would be an awfully high increased cost to try to automate all of that. We have Joe and Tammy in the audience, and I'm going to just click and allow them to talk since we do have a smaller group today. So just speak up anytime if you have some questions, Joseph or Tammy. Thank you. And back to you, CJ.
All right. So that's reducing risk. Some of the common mistakes that people make is going to be over improving the property. You know, if you're putting something over on the west hand side, don't throw in butcher blocks, don't throw in granite countertops. You know, west side of Lancaster in particular. I know we've got a wider audience here, but you know, if you're in the hilltop up in Columbus or Linden, you're going to do things entirely different than what you're going to do over in, you know, German Village or some of the other areas, right? So you know, ideally what you really want to do is look at what's sold in the area. The same, you're already doing this to figure out your ARV numbers. So look at what's sold, but dig through those pictures. What kind of finishes did they have? Was it a laminate countertop? Was it tile showers? Was it, you know, what was going on in those properties, not just what was the sale price, and then build to those standards. Not knowing what local home buyers want. You know, if I'm remodeling a house in Florida and it's, you know, it doesn't have a pool, I'm putting in a pool. That might not be something that I do in other areas or in other states, right? Like in Florida, it's pretty standard that every one of those houses is going to have a pool. You're going to find trends like that in various neighborhoods of, you know, what you're seeing. And again, all that comes down to knowing that area and knowing what people want. Are they buying there for the school district? Are they buying there for, you know, the crime rate? Are they buying there for the amenities? What is it that's going to drive people, and try to identify who your market is for this house before you start your rehab, and build those finishes towards that. Again, foregoing the inspections, either know what you're doing or get people who know what they're doing in to evaluate the property. And that's going to cut down on the mistakes that you make or the unknowns that you have. Still risks, don't get me wrong, but it's going to cut down on that. We already talked a little bit about comps. You know, don't comp something on, you know, in the west side over to, you know, something over in, you know, Hunter's Trace or over in, you know, the River Valley Highlands. You know, make sure you're staying in the right area. If you're not good at this, talk with some local realtors, talk with the realtor that you're going to list with. A lot of times you will get more money listing with a good realtor. You might also want to consider, I don't have this one in here, but staging the property. Know your area, know your market, but a lot of times you're going to get more money if you stage it. Not knowing the sales activity percentage. If I've got an area that's 90% rentals, and I'm trying to sell an owner occupied house, it might not go that well. Maybe I actually want to do lower finishes and look to sell to an investor as opposed to a homeowner. How long is stuff sitting on the market? That's going to help you figure out your holding costs. Talk to realtors. Are you guys still seeing all cash offers, or are we coming to FHA stuff that we've got a lot of contingencies and stuff to fix? Know what's going on in the area, know what's going on with your market. And then don't forget about the landscaping. I can be guilty of it at times too. That first impression curb appeal is actually really important. So make sure to plan a few dollars out towards that. Forgetting about taxes. This cuts a couple of different ways. So we've got a bigger slide deck here for what taxes you're going to have when you flip a property. But even if you're holding a property, if that property has increased in value 200-300%, you need to plan for that on your taxes, on your property taxes, because you're going to have less cash flow once that adjusts, and you want to make sure those numbers are calculated into your longer term numbers. And then don't ignore permits. Especially if you're flipping this to somebody else, you're selling it, you are going to have people asking questions about how did this go from a 3-bedroom to a 5-bedroom or whatever the case may be. And you do not want to not have the permits there. Yes, they slow things down. Yes, they cost money. But one, it's going to protect you in the event that you or your contractors did anything wrong, because there's now an inspection that says, no, that electrical was signed off on by the city. Don't ignore permits. There are some times where permits in certain areas, they want a permit to change a light fixture or something. They can get ridiculous at times. Use your own judgment. I wouldn't tell anybody to not do appropriate permits, nor would I admit to me not doing appropriate permits on a live recording. But try to do things right, especially if you're selling the house. The questions will come up, and you want to have the right answers. Any questions or thoughts or other mistakes that folks may have made in this room?
Well, I don't know about some of the others, but I do know when of course, I have the Happy House Hunters Mastermind group, and I do see where some of the folks are definitely over improving for the neighborhood or the areas, or even with the intent of the property once it's completed. And so that does seem to be, I think, the biggest common mistake, because one of the checks that I like to use is when I purchase a home, I want to ask myself, would I live here? If it's not a neighborhood or a house or whatever that I wouldn't live in, then I have a hard time expecting other folks to want to live there or live in that particular property. And so I'm not guilty, though, of over improving it, but I have seen several in our group that are guilty of that they over improve it, because they make it like it's going to be owner occupied. And so there's a difference between would I live here and am I gonna put the finishes on? Yes, this is not your house. Yes, I get it. And thank you so much for bringing that to the surface, because that is, I think, probably the biggest common mistake I see.
I was going to say, Kathy, to CJ's point, I have a house on the west side of Lancaster with granite countertops. And I have a home appraiser that came in with a much lower number than we expected, and a whole bunch of over improved for the neighborhood written on his report.
Yeah, it's really easy to do. And when you get into flips too, I mean, I am not much of a lipstick on a pig kind of person, but some of these houses they're just not designed to be homes that even last forever. I mean, stuff just wasn't always built right. Are you going to go through and, redo the foundations on all of these? Or are you going to throw some jack stands in the basement and say, you know what, it's likely going to be good for the next 30 years. That's how long anybody's going to live here. There are times when you make it as good as you can. You make sure it's up to proper standards as far as any home inspections or things like that. I've got one flipper that I work with that they typically have between 4 and 10 different things going on at a time. And that, I guess that's maybe another one of the risk things to call out. The more that you have going on, if home sale prices drop 10% across the board and you've got 10 properties out there, that's a lot off of your back end. So and understanding that as a risk maybe is another good thing too. But if they've got that, they're making 20, 30, $40,000 on most of their flips, that 40 ends pretty good, but that 20 end, anything goes wrong and that could go nothing or negative pretty quickly. But they're doing enough volume that it makes up for it, but it also amplifies those risks. So they get in and out of a lot of these in less than a month, and they're making 20 grand on each one of them. So just kind of understand what you're building towards, and what the area is going to want for it are probably the biggest takeaways. So another meme, I actually stumbled across this one earlier. I don't know if you guys have seen this one floating around, but stuff goes wrong. It's great to have the excitement. Like, find a mentor, keep coming to groups like this. Talk to those seasoned investors, and the best thing you can do is educate yourself. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail, right? So the more that you can understand, hey, this is what's going on, this is how the market's reacted to this in the past, this is what people think is going to happen, this is what I think is going to happen. Talk to people, meld all those things together. I wasn't investing during the 2008 crash. I was almost on the verge of bankruptcy throughout that time period. So I haven't been through any real cycles yet. I've only caught the upswing, right? So I love coming to things, talking to folks. Hopefully if we've got some seasoned folks in here afterwards, they grab me and be like, dude, you're doing something really dumb. I want to hear that. I don't know what I don't know. So chat with folks, grow your network, see what you can learn. So the numbers, this is, I'm a numbers guy. That's what I did in IT was, hey, how do we, make sure we never have any downtime, we have redundancies, we, know what the numbers are. So for me personally, I almost never will buy a asset if it doesn't cash flow, if I had to hold it. I've got one that I bought that's kind of borderline. We're running it as a short-term rental currently. And we ultimately decided that we're going to sell it. We're probably going to more than double our money on it. So that kind of comes, I'm going to skip around a little bit. But
now, CJ, I call that a long flip, and I've done some long flips where I bought it with the intent on what I was going to do with it, and then down the road I changed my mind and decided to sell it. So it still becomes a flip. It's just, you just didn't flip it within 30 days or 6 months or whatever. Maybe you flipped it at the end of a couple of years because it just wasn't performing the way you had intended.
Yeah, this one, during the busier season, we bought it with a construction loan through a hard money lender. So we're going to talk about those here in a little bit. But they're super high interest loans, and we got all of the stuff fixed up that we wanted to. We didn't have it rented as much during the peak season because we were trying to finish areas of the house. The top level was completely finished, but the mother-in-law suite and game area and stuff like that, we had a lot of work to do, and we were doing it in between guests, which I had miscalculated. Gosh, we've got to completely clean all this construction debris up well more than what we ever would have if we were coming back the next day. But we got 3 days into it, and okay, we got the soffit done in the basement for half of it. Okay, the next time we have to get the other half. And there was just so much incontinuity towards the project, that we spent a lot more on it than what I had budgeted or what I had thought it would be. And then now we're sitting here saying, okay, we bought this asset for 485,000. We've got about 50,000 wrapped up into it. My gut feeling tells me that it's probably worth around 950. It's really hard to comp this particular one. We did have a pretty good comp come in at 1,218,000 that sold a week or two ago. So it's kind of got me questioning where we're going to be. But even at 950, I mean, we're doing fabulous on this, right? So, to me, I look at that return on equity, the cash on this deal. If we refinance it with a traditional lender, we're going to be fine. It'll cash flow fine. But where we sit right now, there's next to no cash flow. It's barely covering our holding costs, and we've got hundreds of thousands of dollars in equity. What could we do if we tapped that equity? And on this particular deal, I had brought on a partner for it. I've got nothing in the deal. I had a partner bring all of the funds for it, and I was able to keep a majority stake in the property for bringing in the deal. But with this particular one, it might be something where we look to make sure we hit the long-term capital gains and say, hey, we've got a turnkey Airbnb or short-term rental here. If somebody wanted to come into this, we could do a lease option on this for the next 9 months. And that would allow them, if they can bring enough cash to pay off our loan, then that would allow them to stretch things out and make 2 payments across the year to basically take care of it. They'd get an interest-free loan. Our capital gains would reduce drastically. The IRS does state that you are not allowed to structure a deal in a way to explicitly avoid taxes. So we're doing this to help them with their money down. And this is not solely to avoid capital gains. But that's how I'm kind of looking at one of the options to structure this. So maybe if we do get an offer on this, if we get an all cash offer on this, you better believe I'm going to counter with that. How would you like to spend half of that cash now and half later, or maybe,
and these are all great exit strategies. And these are also great, other plans, plan B, plan C, from what you originally intended to do with the property. So again, I think this is a great lesson for all of us is to have those other plans in place. It's just like, the saying that you make money when you buy the real estate. I think you have to have all of your options in place at the beginning of the deal, not at the other end. Now, you may adjust some of those options as things get clearer at the other end, but I think you have to have that plan B in place at the beginning. So what is your comment on that, CJ?
No, I completely agree. We knew when we bought this, this is one of the more expensive assets that I've ever purchased. And we knew when we bought it that, it's in a great area. Honestly, I could see this over the next decade being something that is, worth $2 million. The way that the area is being built out, there's a promenade going on, a boardwalk going in, like there's billions of dollars being dumped into this area. So something else, I'm looking at my own problem now, right? Like I try to look at our customers' problems or the connections that we have to buy and sell real estate, and evaluate their problem. My problem is I either need to refinance this or I need to sell it. So what does a sale look like? It could also look like somebody, maybe we sell an interest in the LLC, similar to what I did with the storage units, to say, hey, you pay off the loan, we'll give you this percentage of the LLC. And ultimately I've decided, and this is another part of getting rid of this in particular, I've decided that I don't want to manage the Airbnb. It's just, it's too much work with the number of beds and the amount of cleaning, and there's no management companies in the area that are, actively doing this type of thing. So I don't want the work. I want out of the work. That kind of helps skew what I wanted to do. But, as far as I see it, looking at my exit strategies, we could either refinance and I can suck it up and do it. I can try to find somebody else to manage it. I can just sell it and eat the capital gains. I can do a lease option and, greatly reduce the capital gains, or I could bring on a partner and as long as that loan gets paid off, and allow them to manage it. And maybe I partner with somebody that's more experienced in this, and the issues I have with trying to run 2 full-time businesses and a pretty decently sized holdings company. I just don't have time for this. So if somebody else does and they're better versed at it, there's a lot of exit strategies, but think through all those. And then when you talk to somebody, they may not know that those are even options that exist. So it's just talking to people, if they've got money to invest or they've got time to invest or whatever, what do they have? They're offering you more than just, they have, if they make an offer on something, they want it for more than one reason. What are their reasons for wanting it? And is there something that's even more beneficial than a direct sale?
I love all of those comments, CJ. And also, I want to just say, whenever you're out networking, is to be totally open, because you never know when you're going to meet someone or have a conversation with someone, and it's the perfect fit that you might not even know you're looking for, and it just happens to be the perfect fit for what it is that you need in your next deal or in a current deal like this one. So just be open when you're out there networking as well.
Yeah, even with my storage units, maybe somebody, if I give a presentation like this, maybe somebody comes up and says, hey, dude, this is what you're doing wrong. Like maybe it's a simple tweak that I don't even know exists. But yeah, hands down, talk to people, tell them what you're doing. Tell them what you want to do. Ask them what they're doing. Ask them how they got where they're going. I have been amazed at the amount of openness people in the real estate community have to share their experiences, their knowledge. I haven't run personally across anybody that's backstabbing, like, oh, I told them about this and they took my idea and ran with it. I mean, it could happen, but the amount that you're going to miss out on if you fear that versus embracing it and saying, you know what, I'm not doing any deals with that person again, you're going to end up ahead, in my opinion.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. Again, just remain open, because there is certainly enough deals out there for everyone. And there are still plenty of deals. I know a lot of folks are saying, oh, well, the Columbus market is, it's changing. And so there's not as many deals as what there were before. There are, you might have to dig a little deeper to get the one in the price range that you need it to be in for your budget. But there's deals out there. You just have to be diligent.
Yeah. And the more knowledge you can have on different strategies, you might have a deal where somebody else didn't. Keep in mind, you're solving their problem. So, if a wholesaler, all they know is I can put this under contract and ask my network for cash buyers, that's way different than, hey, I can solve your painting issue for an option, or I can, come in and buy this subject to the existing mortgage, or, I can get you the money that you need to move to be able to get this. When COVID first hit, I had a buddy who did some HVAC work for me. It was his first purchase. He bought a house up on Buckeye Lake, right on one of the channels up there. And a month later ends up losing his job. He was completely leveraged to the hilt. I'd advanced him some funds to make sure that he ended up being able to get closed for some HVAC work to be done in the future. He's just completely upside down. He lost his job. And I said to him, look, we don't know what's going to happen, but here's what I can do for you. You're darn near 100% leveraged on this. It was an FHA loan, right? You've got an awesome rate on a fixed term for a long time. This in itself is going to have value. So what I can do for you, let's sit it out. Let's wait. Let's see what the government does. They're talking about putting, deferred payments, adding it on the back end of loans, whatever. Let's wait, see what they do. And if you get to the point where, hey, they're going to start reporting my credit, or hey, they're going to foreclose on me, whatever it is, I want you to come to me and I will buy your house. I will pay whatever it takes to get it to current. and then we're going to move the deed over into my name. And if you're back on your feet, you've got a new job, I will rent it back to you at this rate. And anytime within the next 5 years, I will give you an option to buy it back at this percentage above what I'm buying it for. So that took all of his risk away. And I knew with standard appreciation and principal pay down and everything else that I'd be all right on that deal. And he has the ability to buy it back. I'm giving him that option to where I'm definitely going to make money, even on the back end, if that all came to fruition. That's problem solving. Ultimately, the government, gave him more money than he was making before, and he did just fine and didn't need any of that. But
Yeah, that was definitely a win-win.
yeah, that's the problem solving side of things. A wholesaler,
And it was a win, and it was a win for the lender too, because
Yeah.
they were not gonna end up in a foreclosure.
Yeah. So just try to think outside the box, try to solve problems. Brainstorm with people, join masterminds. There's so many cool things you can do in real estate. If you can come up to it and the parties agree, it's probably legal. So, but back to our numbers, cash on cash, ideally when I buy an asset, I want to know that it will cash flow as a long-term rental. If it can cash flow as a long-term rental, I suspect that I will be good. And typically I look for about a 20% reduction in rents when I decide whether or not it can cash flow. So market rents $1,000 a month. If rents drop to $800 a month, is this break even or better after accounting for all of the management fees, CapEx set asides, everything else, however you underwrite your properties. If it's a straight, I take 35% off the top for operating costs minus debt service. If your formulas are a little bit more detailed, to me, I want to make sure any property I have can weather a 20% reduction in rents and cash flow. If it can, then I have no real risk if I have to convert it from a flip to a buy and hold. If the market goes down, I can't sell it for what I want. It's just not worth, the $10,000 or maybe even a negative amount, right? From an equity standpoint, I don't care about the equity at that point as much. I care about the cash flow. And it needs to be break even or better with that 20% reduction. And then, the return on equity, we already talked a little bit about that. If you've got a house that's worth $150,000, you owe $75,000 on it, you've got $75,000 worth of equity locked up in that house. What you really want to be doing is saying, okay, with the $75,000 locked up, what's my cash flow on this? You're kind of building that in, you get your principal pay down and everything. Your return on equity against that 75,000 is going to be way less. It's locked equity. So does it make sense to cash out refi, pull those funds out and buy another duplex or some other property, and reduce that cash flow because you pulled the equity out, but now you've got a different asset that's cash flowing more? Or are you looking at it in a way that you say, what, the amount of money I could make on this sale is going to be my next 20 years worth of rent, or 10 years worth of rent profits. I want to realize those now and do something else with it. Basically, can you pull the funds and reinvest them in a different way that's going to get you more money? And if so, how much more money is that? Do you have the deal waiting, or are you just anticipating something to be there? How quickly can you put that money to work if you pulled it out? And are you pulling out via sale? Are you pulling out via a line of credit? Are you pulling out via finance? Those are the things that you're going to want to look at. So the next line here, the Mayo, is the max allowable offer. If you haven't seen this formula yet, this is what most folks, whether it's a BRRRR or a flip, look at as their max number. So you're looking at your purchase price times 70%. You need to be buying this at a discount. You need to have overhead. Most banks are going to want 20, 25, 30%. So if you say, hey, I need to underwrite this, I need to be all in at 70% of whatever the ARV is. You're starting with your purchase price times 0.7, that gets you to your 70%, and then you're going to subtract out your rehab cost. So if the house is going to appraise at $100,000 and you're going to multiply that, the ARV, 100,000 times 0.7, we're at 70. It needs $40,000 worth of rehab. The most you can offer on this property to be profitable is $30,000. Some folks, I've seen this number as deals have dried up start to get closer to 80%. I don't recommend doing that. Again, you make money when you buy real estate. But this is the formula that most of your wholesalers know is how you calculate your max allowable offer. So a wholesaler on that same example might say, well, gosh, the most you can offer for this house is $30,000. So if I can get it under contract for $20,000, I know that you're going to buy it from me all day at $30,000. So I'm going to market it at $30,000, get it under contract for 20. And if somebody picks it up, I made a $10,000 assignment fee. If somebody doesn't pick it up during that first week, maybe I drop that to a $5,000 assignment fee. And ultimately, as a wholesaler, you should be using this formula as well. If you're not, then you're probably tying up people's properties and going to risk not closing on it. Any questions on the max allowable offer?
Not really. Well, maybe this question. In your formula, CJ, shouldn't that be ARV times 0.7?
You are right. That should be.
Okay.
Thank you. I said it right. I just didn't type it right. So thank you very much for catching that. Yes, that is the ARV. So $100,000 ARV times 0.7 minus rehab costs. I will get that updated in the slide deck.
And then hopefully after you make that offer, that number becomes a purchase price.
Yes. Yeah. And I mean, ultimately you're negotiating with the wholesaler as well. They pretty much always have room to move on whatever it is they're doing. So it's just a matter of competing with other people. It's going to sell for what it's worth, right? So understanding when you get a good enough deal, you're good. Some of these wholesalers on some of these bigger houses, I mean, you might see them taking down a $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 assignment fee. Who cares if you're making money? Who cares if they made more on the deal than you did if you're making the amount of money that matters to you?
Yeah.
A lot of people really discount the amount of marketing and costs that many of the wholesalers actually have. And if you think about it, realtors are taking 6%, 3% to the buyer, 3% to the seller. An average assignment fee is around $7,000. So, you're really just paying for the marketing and the information, the bird dogging of the properties.
Well, I'm glad they're doing all the work. That's all the time consuming work that I don't have time for.
Yeah, absolutely. So,
CJ, wholesalers make thousands of calls every day. I don't want to do that.
yeah. So, basically I'm encouraging you. I mean, I see some stuff where it's like, okay, this is a straight firehouse and you're saying a $25,000 rehab. Like, they're a lot of times they're going to overestimate the ARV. They're going to underestimate the repair values. And you have to be able to do your own due diligence, or you have to get enough of a relationship to know, we've got some really great wholesalers in our area. We've talked a little bit about Josh. Tommy Hart does a really great job with a lot of stuff. But there are some wholesalers that just don't do their due diligence. They lock up properties, they let contracts expire. They try to get by without putting any sort of earnest money down. Not that they need to put earnest money down to be considered a good wholesaler, but that makes sure that, they've got at least a little bit of skin in the game. So kind of knowing how your wholesalers work, what they operate on, and then knowing your market, knowing your numbers, knowing your ARV, and not trusting a word that they tell you, aside from here's the pictures and when can I get in to see the property, or can I get in to see the property? Some of the other stuff, as far as what I look at when I evaluate a purchase, we've talked about the Airbnb. Right now, I don't know that I'd want to take on another Airbnb or start doing Airbnb management through my property management company, based on, the place we've got, it sleeps 14 people. There's 10 beds. There's one washer and dryer. You can't get that amount of laundry done without going to a facility or utilizing a service. We utilize the service, and the cost of that is, not bad for what they're doing, but it really just starts to eat into margins or time, or how you want to lay it out. If it was a 1-bedroom place that you could throw the laundry in when you get there, you clean the place, you throw it on as you leave. That's entirely different, right? So, what level are you going to have to put into this? Are you going to be handling the construction? How long is this going to take? Is there income coming in while it's under construction? With this Airbnb, we were able to rent it out and cover all of our holding costs throughout the busy season. So, that was awesome. Or, is it a duplex or a triplex or a quad where, hey, we're going to take this on, we're going to renovate these units, and it cash flows while it's under construction. That's amazing, right? So, kind of look at those different things. Are there any ancillary things on the property? Does it have docks that you might be able to rent out? Is there, farmland that comes with it that's, got, any sort of tax credits, or, is leased out to anybody, or, things of that nature, in addition to the house. And then another thing to keep in mind while you're evaluating a purchase, talk with your accountants, try and get into some groups on Facebook or Clubhouse or wherever. Are there any sort of tax or historical or energy credits that are going to come in, and knowing, hey, I took this place down to the studs and I added insulation or whatever, that's going to qualify for energy credits that you may not even know to talk to your accountant about. He's not going to know to ask. So you have to do your own due diligence to say, hey, I found this thing. Does this apply to me? Section 179D is all the energy credit stuff. You took a place down to the studs, make sure to ask your accountant about it. I'm looking at doing a pretty heavy remodel in historical district right now with lead problems. There's grants up to $20,000 per unit. This is a 4-unit. I could potentially get $80,000 to help with the remodel on this. And it's in a historical district. So if it's applied correctly, there's actually a 25% tax credit that I can apply for as well. It's got a lot more to go to it. I don't know if it'll line up for me, but asking those questions, or maybe it's a new development build and you're sitting there negotiating before you break ground on, hey, we're going to put this, $50 million facility in here. And we're going to have this many employees. What kind of tax credits can I get locally? There's all kinds of stuff that you want to, you don't know what you don't know. So talk to the people that are in those areas, right? Talk to accountants that specialize in new builds and construction and energy credits. Talk to people in the historical societies. Talk to, hell, even some of the flooring companies. There, a few years back, they were doing a tax credit on bamboo flooring because it grows back so quickly and, whatnot from a sustainability perspective. There's all kinds of stuff out there. Try and find ways to get plugged into that. And that might help make a decision, gosh, on this buy and hold, if I use bamboo flooring and I can get a tax credit for whatever I spent on it, which, by the way, that's expired. But that might shift you away from some other type of flooring because ultimately it saves you money. So this is predominantly the types of things that I go through when I'm evaluating a purchase and, what it makes sense to do from an exit strategy perspective. Any other questions?
This is good stuff, CJ.
Yeah, I don't think I asked you how long I have either. So if I'm going over, I'm sorry.
That we are a little bit over, but it's interesting stuff. So go ahead.
Well, I will fly through the last couple of slides here. So obviously you can buy stuff with cash, you can buy stuff with private lenders, you can buy stuff with hard money lenders. I've mentioned scenarios where I've used credit cards. You can use traditional banks. Gator lenders is one that a lot of folks probably haven't heard of as much. Gator lenders, gators will eat anything, right? So the carcasses that are left over, whatever it is, the stuff that nobody above wants, your hard money lenders don't want, your private lenders don't want. Let's say that you're offering, you're a wholesaler, and you want to be able to put $1,000 earnest money down. You've got 30 deals under contract. That's $30,000 out at $1,000 each, right? So there are people that will do smaller loans with bigger upside. So Gator lenders might say, you know what? I've got $100 grand. I will fund all of your stuff out there, but for each one of these that closes, I want $3,000 back. And the way that it's structured, they're getting their money back as well. So, I mean, they're doubling and tripling their money on some of these smaller deals. So gator lenders are pretty cool, but a lot of times they're looking for a percentage or a huge upswing in dollar amounts. Pace Morby, if anybody follows him, is kind of the person that leads a lot of that. He's got a great following on Facebook as well. Seller financing, seller partnering. We talked a little bit about, with this Airbnb, maybe it's something that I actually partner on to somebody else. They may not even think to ask for that, right? And then syndication. So those are the various types of things I have, used. Hard money lenders is, typically it's a higher percentage interest rate. But they'll fund 100% of the rehab typically associated with that if your numbers are good enough through their own underwriting. Typically they have a couple of points, but that place that we have, we had less than a week to close, and they were ready to go in 2 business days without an appraisal. Even getting a wire from private lenders, IRAs don't go that quick, right? So each one of these has their areas that make the most sense to do. So I think this is my last slide before my info pops up here. So short-term capital gains, typically if you hold an asset for less than a year and you sell it, you're going to end up having short-term capital gains. There are some exceptions to that. If you end up with a dealer designation, which you guys can read up a little bit more on that. You might have ways around it. If you're, flipping for a living and that's your active income, there might be some ways to restructure that. But ultimately, it's typically around 35% of the sale price. Varies based on a number of things. Whereas your long-term capital gains is typically going to be 15%, and there's ways that limits and things like that you have to get past before you have them, and things of that nature as well. So pretty substantial gain difference or tax difference between short-term and long-term capital gains. So the next thing is, how do I avoid those? Short-term capital gains, a lot of times you're not going to be able to push that into a 1031 exchange. Pretty sure that has a year limit before you can get to it. The longer term stuff, you can basically say, hey, I want to take my basis in this property, and instead of realizing the tax gains, we're just going to roll all of that into the next property, whether that's a REIT or another property or another series of properties. You can do that. I think with opportunity zones, you can actually do the short-term capital gains into that. I would double check that. Don't take me at face value. But opportunity zones are distressed areas that the government has identified that they want to see private investors helping in. So, with a 1031, you basically move everything over. With an opportunity zone, they're going to stretch out those capital gains over a few years. Some of the stuff's expired. I haven't read up on it in the last year or so, but I think at the end of last year, they changed some of it, but it was stretched out over 5 years instead of realizing all the gains in 1 year. And then whatever you bought with that, you had to improve it. So if you bought raw land and put a structure on, or you bought a real dump and then you for 50 grand and you put at least 50 grand into it, you would, if you held that asset for 10 years, when you sell that, there was zero capital gains on that new asset. So you got to stretch out your capital gains, build up the community, and then receive no capital gains for it when you sell. So talk to somebody. It works kind of the same as a 1031, but you can actually utilize opportunity zones with stock market gains as well. So it's a way to kind of move things between classes, which you can't really do with the 1031 either. Cost segregations, if I can't get out of the taxes between a 1031 or an opportunity zone, I can buy new things and I can accelerate the depreciation on it to offset the gains that way. So I'm working with an investor that had a pretty large sale. We were able to work with him to acquire 4 new properties this year. And between the cost segs on those properties, it's going to offset all of those taxes for him. So standard depreciation, make sure you understand how depreciation works. It's a pretty complicated topic and there are tons of ways it can be applied. But the more you understand about it, the more you're going to be able to talk with your accountant and figure out if accelerating depreciation in a variety of different ways, whether that's, straight section 179, whether that's cost segs, whether that's, you know, some of the stuff kind of is arbitrary where you get to spend it, right? So if I'm doing a big remodel and all of these units need paint, do I put that paint into maintenance and write it off this year? Or do I put it as part of the rehab that might be depreciated over 27 and a half years? That's going to depend on what you want your tax strategy to be, and how that works. Or there's certain things that, as part of that section 179, you put in new smoke detectors and fire extinguishers into a 9-unit apartment building, it comes out to a few $1,000s. You get to put that on the balance sheet, and then section 179 depreciate that in accelerated fashion if your income is positive. So there's a lot of little rules, regulations. Again, not a CPA, but a numbers geek that probably annoys my CPA more than he would like to admit. So understand depreciation to the best you can, and then make sure to account for those property tax adjustments if you're holding the property. We talked a little bit about that earlier. And with that, if anybody is looking for property management services, Focus Realty and Management is the management company that I am part owner on. Brian Gibson is our broker, and him or some of our other staff would likely be the person that answers the phone there. And then we recently moved our construction office to not be part of the same office building and on the 3rd floor where construction equipment does not easily make it up and downstairs, over to West 6th Avenue here in Lancaster. Predominantly, we're just doing work for our holdings companies and our management companies. Clients. So we're not really soliciting any sort of other work. But with that said, I do have 3 people now on staff that are, one is already licensed, and then the other 2 are ready to sit for the lead abatement stuff. So if you end up with any lead houses, that's something I'm considering kind of looking at as an investment strategy. If we've got the staff to be able to properly abate things, that can be pretty expensive. Right now, there is some grant funds for it. So that might be another tool I can take and offer to our clients. Hey, you're in a bad spot. The grants are able to pay for this. Let's help introduce you to that and walk you through that process. And my construction company can make some money, or maybe they're just tired of the property. They want to walk away. And we can work out a deal to allow that to happen. So, but yeah, these are my companies, how you can get a hold of us. On Facebook as well. If anybody wants to find me on there, you can shoot me messages. I truly do love networking and talking with folks. With that said, I do maintain a pretty busy schedule. So if you do send me a message, don't feel bad if you follow up a couple of days later, like, hey, it's me. That's fine. I probably dropped on my second page of email or something. So, feel free to reach out to me. I'll do my best to get back. I guess is the disclaimer for all of that.
All right. Well, leave that screen up for just a moment. So everyone that's on the call, if you want to get in touch with CJ, get out your cell phone, take a picture of the screen. I'll include it in the replay of what we did tonight. So you can always go to kathybenner.com, scroll down to the Happy House Hunters free meetup replays and click through. And this will be in the description underneath of the replay. So I'll have his information there as well. But so you don't have to click through and to get to it. If you're interested in talking further with CJ, just take a screen print if you're on your computer, or just take a picture with your phone, whatever works best for you to get his contact information.
And I am happy to stick around and answer questions after the recording stops here if anybody wants to.
All right, I'll let you stop sharing your screen then at this point, and then we will see if anyone has any questions. So anyone at all, I think I've let everybody talk since Joseph and Tammy and David are in the audience. So if anyone has any questions, please just jump in.
So what with the management company, CJ, what is your what areas are you willing to manage apartments in or units in?
So we are currently servicing predominantly Fairfield and Licking counties. Almost all of our stuff is either in Newark or in Lancaster. We do have some outliers in Logan, Ohio, some over in Baltimore. We're talking with somebody who's got some stuff over in Circleville. So basically, our service area we're willing to service is anywhere in Fairfield County or surrounding counties, with the exception of Franklin County. We've got some stuff that's right on the verge. Canal Winchester's kind of split. We will hit the far side of Canal, maybe Groveport, but Columbus in particular, city proper, they've got a lot of non-landlord friendly things going on. Not sure if anybody's followed up with any of those, but the need to possibly finance a deposit, the need to not hold certain types of income sources at a different standard, some of the stuff that just doesn't really follow our underwriting model and offer the same protections that we want to give for the landlords. And it's changing enough that we don't want to be a part of that. So we do have 2 different property management companies we do recommend up in Columbus. I've actually got one of my properties is being managed there for those same reasons that I personally own up there. So I can definitely point folks that way. And then like I said, we're pretty much all around Fairfield County, going any other direction.
Excellent, thank you.
Any other questions? Jump in. CJ, I want to say thank you so much for this information. I did some screen prints there and made some notes. So yeah, I've got my little note tablet here filled with notes on the conversation tonight. So it's great stuff. If anyone has any questions for CJ later, if you want to chat with him individually, again, just get in touch with him. I will put all of his contact information in the description of the replay. And so with that, I think we are going to go for this evening. And CJ, thank you so much for this. And Christy, thank you for being on with us, and Kyle. And then in the audience, we had Tammy and David Teben and Joseph Stevens. Thank you for being with us this evening. And we'll see everyone next month when we're talking about filling. And so CJ, if you're not tied up on that first Tuesday, you're invited to come and jump back in, because I know with your management companies, you have a lot of expertise on filling as well. And I'm going to be presenting about filling, the buy and holds, and we'll go from there. So if anybody has questions on that, get your questions ready. That always seems to be the hot button, is how do you deal with the tenants? So anyway, with that said, we're going to go, and we'll see everyone next month. So thank you so much for tuning in.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Bye.
CJ.